Another school shooting in America. The latest scene of bloodshed and sorrow is Abundant Life Christian School. That's a private K through 12 school in Madison, Wisconsin. A law enforcement source tells CBS News that a 17-year-old female student opened fire today, killing a teacher and another teenage student. The shooter was later found dead in the school. Right now, 2 critically wounded students are fighting for their lives in the hospital, while 4 others are being treated for non-life-threatening injuries. President Biden called the shooting shocking and unconscionable, but it is part of a uniquely American epidemic. Guns are the leading cause of death of children, teens, and young adults in this country. CBS's Charlie DeMar leads us off tonight from a family reunification center in Madison. And Charlie, what's happening there now?
Nora, an incredibly emotional day for so many here in Madison, Wisconsin. Right now, police say the focus remains on reunifying students with their families, and that's what's been going on at this medical center for much of the day as investigators search for a motive.
How many more times we need to see this before we need to know something needs to happen, bro? How many more times we need to have this discussion? How many more times do we have to see families torn apart like this? How many more times do we have to see children like have to now, who are now probably going to need therapy for the rest of their lives, who are now going to be scarred by this traumatic event that they were all witness to in that school? You know what I mean? I instantly thought about myself in this situation, bro. You ever been to a private school, Christian school? I ended up at one in 10th grade after I got in so much trouble at my high school, at public school. I ended up at one, bro. And the reason why I bring that up is because I know those type of schools, and those are close-knit schools, bro. Everybody knows everybody in those, and the ones that I know of, they're very, very close. Families, parents, teachers, children, everybody's close in those schools. And if you were like the one that I went to, you went to church in those schools too. So it's like, bro, like, man, this is rough. I'm tired of seeing this.
Got a call coming in at Abundant Life Christian Church that's advising someone was shot.
9 days before Christmas.
I've got 2 medics and Engine 5 assigned.
Copy. Let's make this an active shooter incident.
Police say a teenager opened fire at Wisconsin's Abundant Life Christian School, killing at least 1 teen student and a teacher.
Today truly is a sad day for Madison and for our country.
Madison Police Chief Sean Barnes.
6 other people were injured. 2 students are now in critical condition in the hospital, and these injuries are considered life-threatening injuries. The shooter was dead upon our arrival, police department arrival, and no officers fired their weapons.
CBS News has learned the shooter carried a 9mm pistol, the motive unknown. The school has more than 300 students, ranging from kindergarten to 12th grade. Bethany Hyman's daughter attends the school.
It was a traumatic experience that I had to get here as soon as possible, as close as I possibly could. I know that my daughter is safe from what I've heard.
Dave Wagner is the former principal.
I know that my heart grieves beyond words with them. I know the principal. I know several of the teachers. They're going to be impacted for their life by the tragedy of this day.
This was the nation's 39th school shooting this year that has resulted in deaths or injuries. And Saturday marked 12 years since 20 first graders were gunned down at Sandy Hook Elementary School. Madison now is the latest city to bear the burden.
I'm feeling a little dismayed now. So close to Christmas. Every child, every person in that building is a victim. And these types of trauma don't just go away.
And back at the school, the FBI is working with local law enforcement to process the scene, conduct witness interviews, and they are also going to try and obtain a number of search warrants as investigators are in the early stages of this investigation. Nora?
Charlie DeMar, thank you for that information. Another.
I know everybody wants to be like, yo, what's the answer? What's the answer then? I don't know the answer. You know what I mean? Because I'm not completely for the ban of guns. Because I know if we ban them, the criminals are still gonna get them illegally, and I need some way to protect my family. So I'm not completely on the side of banning guns, but I know we need to do something because this shouldn't happen. 39 times this year is 39 times too many. Something's gotta happen, bro. And I don't have the answers. I don't know. But I'm tired of seeing kids, and I can only imagine, like he said, what those teachers, who wants to be a teacher? How can you convince somebody to want to come be a teacher at a school when you can't even focus because you don't know what you're up against on a day-to-day basis? How do you protect yourself and the students? Now, they say she was down before the cops arrived and they never fired their weapon, so I don't know who actually took her down. Maybe I'll find that out as we continue to go forward and checking out these videos. But what's the solution to this? Something's got to happen.
The school shooter was a 17-year-old female. She was also a student at the Abundant Life Christian School in Madison, Wisconsin. This is incredibly rare. In recent history, meaning the last 40-plus years, there have only been 2 school shootings conducted by biological females. Today was one of them. The other was the Covenant School in Nashville, and that individual identified as a man. Here are the other things that we know. The firearm used was apparently a handgun, and it was all confined to one space, although it has not been specified whether that space was a single classroom or a hallway. Now, at this point, motive is still unknown. However, police are trying to execute a search warrant in order to learn more about the suspect and kind of see what happened, what went wrong. Also, police have been saying that they were not the ones to take the shooter out, so it sounds like it might be self-inflicted. Now, obviously, we are still waiting for more information to come out, about the shooter, but more importantly, about the victims. Now, if you don't want to miss any of these critical updates, make sure to hit that follow button.
I am legitimately shocked that the school shooter from today is a girl, a 15-year-old girl. Natalie, aka Samantha, was obsessed with true crime as well as other school shootings. Here she is wearing the same exact shirt as Eric Harris from Columbine. No one can convince.
No. No. Now that's what scares me about the crime docs. I can't lie. You know what I mean? That scares me about these crime docs. Because I get so caught up in it. I love to watch them. But you can also, in the back of your mind, think about like, okay, is this going to spark or create a copycat? You know what I'm saying? Because they're all over the place now. People watch them, get hooked on them, binge watch them, all that type of stuff. That's all you hear people talking about now. And while that's good, because it creates that, but it also has a bad side effect to it. Like she was 15. How else did she learn about what happened or took place back then? You know what I'm saying? Like, oh man, have they spoke to the parents?
Me that she just coincidentally had this shirt. This photo has been shared all around, but her boyfriend says that he feels that was edited and that is what she looked like to him. She apparently posted a link to her manifesto, but people weren't able to access it. However, she also sent it to her boyfriend, who did release parts of it to a news source. She claimed that she got the weapon to do this through lies, manipulation, and the stupidity of her father. She had often considered taking her own life, but thought that this would be better than just going out in a boring self-unaliving. Because this way she could create mass pain and always be remembered in the worst possible way. Natalie also had a very obvious hatred for men. It didn't matter if they were babies or the elderly. She also said she was bullied and treated like she wasn't part of her family, like she was the wrong child. She definitely disliked her father. There were so many signs here. Even the post she was making of very horrifying things should have been a sign. A 15-year-old girl posting graphic videos of people literally passing away. In what world is that normal behavior and why was it ignored?
Today at 10:57 a.m., our team was called to the Abundant Life Christian School in reference to an active shooter. We know that 3 people are dead, including the suspect shooter. We know that the suspect shooter was a teenage student who attended the school. 2 other people have died. That died were a teacher and a teenage student. 6 other people were injured. 2 students are now in critical condition in the hospital, and these injuries are considered life-threatening injuries. 4 students are also at other area hospitals with non-life-threatening injuries. But these are just the physical injuries that we know about. We know that this was the middle of the day, of a school day, and so there will be other injuries that we'll have to face for a very, very long time. And we're going to do everything we can as a community to heal those injuries as well. I think we can all agree that enough is enough. And we have to come together to do everything we can to support our students, to prevent press conferences like these from happening again and again and again. Today at 10:50.
Yeah, but it's not going to just take us. The higher ups got to step in and do something, but nobody wants to. And I'm about sick of hearing enough is enough. I mean, we can pretty much play that on a broken. That's a broken record at this point. Enough is enough. Like, when is somebody? How many more kids gonna have to experience this? Used to be it was once in your lifetime you might have heard about something like this happening. Crazier times maybe twice. But now, bro, 39 in a year? In a year. Who feels comfortable sending their kids to school? Like, no.
Officials in Madison, Wisconsin are speaking to reporters right now at a private Christian school in Madison, Wisconsin, the scene of an apparent school shooting. Let's listen.
We had officers from around the county and around the state that came in support of this particular incident. Officers located a juvenile who they believe was responsible for this, deceased in the building. Additionally, the officers began administering life-saving efforts to anyone who was wounded and making sure that those persons were transported. What we know is that a total of about 7 persons were transported from the scene to area hospitals for treatment.
Officials in Madison.
Now, a lot of people are thinking like, wow, normally you probably hear this in public school. But now here it is happening in a Christian private school where most people would love to be able to put their kids, right? Because, you know, it's more, the one I went to is that more one-on-one attention, even though you're in a classroom with, you know, a few more people, but you get more of that one-on-one attention than it has the different values that you may want your child to receive that they don't receive in public schools, and talking about maybe your religious beliefs and different things like that. So a lot of people would love to send their children to Christian schools, but may not be able to afford it because it does come with, and maybe not all of them, but the one I know of, it came at, you had to pay. You know what I'm saying? So that kept a lot of people from doing it. But now, here's this. Now people are going to be like, wow, so what do they do? This is horrifying. What do they do now?
Terrible school shooting yesterday in Madison, Wisconsin. A teacher and a student were killed there when a 15-year-old girl opened fire and then took her own life. 6 other people were taken to the hospital, 2 with life-threatening injuries.
Authorities were called here to Abundant Life Christian School, as you mentioned, by a 2nd grader just before 11 a.m. yesterday. Now, when police arrived to the scene, they found the alleged shooter dead along with a 9mm handgun. Police tell us that the suspected shooter was a 15-year-old female student who opened fire during study hall occupied by students in various grades. Now, authorities have not told us how she got that gun, but say that her parents that are cooperating with the investigation. Now, earlier today, we heard from the Madison Police Chief, Sean Barnes, who told us that an incident like this affects him personally.
Before I was a police officer, I was a public school teacher. I taught history at a public high school for 4 years before I made the switch over to policing. I actually had to take a couple of beats myself last night and throughout the course of the day to gather myself and come to grips with this as well.
And Police Chief Barnes also telling us that 2 of those who were injured have since been released, and the identities of the deceased, a teacher and a student, are still unknown.
I heard first police cars after police cars after police cars, and they sounded close. So I went on the internet and I looked up the fire department scanner, and I heard that they were doing a triage area at the city church, and that there was one person who was DOA. So then I walked down to the sidewalk in front of the school and the church, and I never saw so many police cars in my life, just blue and red lights lining the school, lining the street, fire department, paramedics, everybody was there. It's amazing how quick they got there. Yeah. And I saw some officers with long guns headed into the school. I think everything was pretty much done by then, but they had a K-9 unit. And slowly, as I stood on the sidewalk across from the school, you could see students being let out of the school. Some of the older students were running across the parking lot to the church sanctuary. And then later on, very slowly, in a more orderly fashion, the younger students holding hands were let out to go across the parking lots to the sanctuary. Then you saw a couple of the paramedic ambulances slowly back up and leave, and I assume they were taking the injured to the hospital.
John, thank you for that description. And I want to ask you, you must have known right away what was going on. And how did you react? And what can you tell us about that school and the surrounding community where you live?
Well, it's a quiet neighborhood. It's a church school of somewhere around 350 kids. The students at the school are from the church, city church, but they also come from many other churches in the city of Madison. So it's a mixture of students, and they accept just any students now through the voucher program. So it's a mixture of students from the city of Madison that want a Christian education. And the neighborhood's quiet. I mean, it's the last place on earth you would ever expect a shooting.
And that is typical in so many ways of these events. John Diaz de Leon of Madison, Wisconsin, thank you for coming on and telling us what you saw.
I heard first police cars after police cars.
There was a school shooting in Madison, Wisconsin a week before Christmas break. A teacher and a student both died and 6 others were injured. I just want to be sure that all those people who were so upset over that CEO being shot and killed a few weeks ago, right, are coming on this app with that same anger and energy. Y'all sat and gave so much empathy. Oh my God, the CEO, he was a father. He had kids. He was a friend. Immediately you guys were, oh my God, we have to put legislation in place. We have to put policy in place so no one's making these ghost guns. You know, we got to do something about this because these CEOs, they're dying. A teacher and a student and their classmates are gunned down, right, innocently. They've done nothing wrong. And all y'all want to offer them is thoughts and prayers. No legislation or policy talks right now. That's only when CEOs get harmed. You know, the rich people who are patting your pockets, who are getting you elected. I want to make sure that NPR and Fox News and everyone else who used my soundbite when I was talking about Luigi, right, they use these soundbites too. Sure, you're consistent because before you guys were, oh, let's change policies. And now all you're going to offer is thoughts and prayers. You're not going to think about how this teacher probably had kids, was a family person. You're not going to talk about how this student had many more years that they could have lived. Right? You're not going to talk about any of that. Simply, all you'll do is offer thoughts and prayers. You're not going to have the outrage they did before. This isn't going to be headline news for a week, and you'll go to business as usual. A teacher and a student, they're not going to be able to celebrate Christmas with their families. And I can promise for every other student at that school and the 6 other that were injured, this Christmas is going to look a lot different. They're forever traumatized by this. If you're able to show empathy for a millionaire CEO who harmed tens of thousands of people with their policies, make sure you're giving that same empathy to teachers and students who are affected by this. There was a school shooting in Madison, Wisconsin.
Tell me what he said wrong. Tell me what he said that's wrong. You know what I mean? They jumped on that story. They jumped on it, talked about everything that needs to go in place. Debates have been going on about it. Now, what's going to happen now about this? Will this be a 1-2 day a week thing and then you don't hear nothing else about it? Or will they really, really, really stop everything that they're doing and focus their attention on the future? The kids are the future, right? They're the future. There's no future without them. Correct? So, what's going to be done?
Yeah, I was in English, and then they said it was a lockdown drill, so we went to the side of the building, and then we went to the church after they came and got us. and then we just waited to give them some food, and then waited for them to transport us to the hospital and get our moms and dads. We heard them, and then some people started crying, and then we just waited till the police came, and then they escorted us out to the church.
How many gunshots did you hear?
I heard 2.
And what were you thinking? What are you thinking now?
I was scared. Why did they do that? Why? Yeah, I was in English, and then they said it was a lockdown drill, so we went inside of the building.
No kid should have to deal with that, let alone be here giving an interview about it. Something so fresh. Like, no kid should have to deal with that. That just aged that child by I don't know how many years. That child has now witnessed something so traumatic that even adults couldn't handle if that incident took place at your workplace or something like that. Could you imagine what type of fear you would have going forward, what it would do to you and everything like that? This is a child who probably, and don't get me wrong, he just did a way better job in front of that microphone than I probably could have done in that situation. My nerves would have probably been bad. I don't smoke, but I'd have probably had a cigarette in my hand trying to figure out how to calm my nerves down. Like, so to see that child do that and have to grow up that quick, and like, has he even processed his emotions yet? Do he even know how, like, all of this, man, that's scary. No child should be in that position.
Can we just talk about how a second grader was the first person to call 911 after the shooting at a Christian school in Madison, Wisconsin? A second grader, like, let that sink in. There is no possible way that when I was in second grade, I would have known to call 911. I probably wouldn't even have known what was happening. And that just goes to show that years and years ago, this was not a concern for a majority of school kids. Like, how sick is it that kids now have to worry and know how to call 911 because situations that, like what happened in Madison, are becoming somewhat common? Can we just talk about how a second grader was the first person to call?
And let's also talk about the conversation of cell phones with your children. We need to have that conversation. Have you been for your kids going to school having a cell phone just in case they need to duck in a corner and call 911 or you? You ever, or you know what I mean? Because I've also heard the debates about whether or not kids should have cell phones and taking the cell phones away from the kids. Not social media. We had that conversation about the Australia ban, but actual cell phones to be able to reach your parent. How do y'all feel about that? Like, I don't know about y'all, but with that, I want my kids to have a cell phone because maybe they can't get to and they need to call 911 if they can't get to somebody. And then turn around after they call 911, call me so I can get to them. Like, it's so many things that you have to equip your kid. And shout outs to the parents of that second grader who's probably taught them and had conversations with them about, hey, if this goes on and you hear it, you call 911 and then you get somewhere and you hide and you cover up and you stay there until somebody comes find. Like, shout outs to them for having that type of conversation, because these days you got to, and that's sad, but you have to.
It does not have to be like this. It does not have to be like this, but it will continue to be like this. Parents will continue to send their kids to school not knowing if they will see them alive at the end of the day. It does not have to be like this.